Here's part 3 of What If Mace Windu Trained Maul. Our story picks up exactly where we left off, at the end of part 2. As Maul raced towards the Chancellor's office, he sensed the presence of the Sith Lord he fought previously on Mandalore, with his brother, Savage. Maul entered the room just as Palpatine was unleashing his devastating Force lightning onto Mace. In this exact moment, Maul stood there stunned, completely at a loss for words as he saw the sight of his master deflecting the Chancellor's lightning. He is one of the most attuned Jedi in the Force within the Order, and quickly figured out that Palpatine was the Sith Lord. Maul stood there with his lightsaber idling. The three men had no idea that he was standing in the entrance. As Palpatine's lightning burned through the air across the room, Maul heard him yell out, Maul noticed Anakin tilting his head to Mace's direction, as his master was struggling to hold off Sidious's lightning.
I have the power to save the one you love. You must choose. Don't listen to him, Anakin.
Hearing this intrigued Maul. In his mind, he questioned himself. What is Palpatine referring to when he tells Anakin that he can save the ones he loves? What does he mean by that? Maul's feelings and senses begin to confirm his sneaking suspicion that he's had for a long time regarding Anakin and Padme. Maul may be arrogant in his own way, like the Jedi Council, but he is no fool.
Don't let him kill me. I can't hold it any longer. I can't. I'm weak. Too weak. Anakin! Help me! I can't hold on any longer.
Maul then realized he needed to act fast. This situation could turn out for the worst in the Sith's favor. The Zabrak moved his lightsaber, enough for everyone to hear the idle hum of his blade. Mace, Anakin, and Palpatine all acknowledged his presence. He walked up and stood next to Anakin. Palpatine expressed an even more distressed face than he already had. Sidious sensed the massive shift in the Force against his favor. The Chancellor wasn't expecting Maul to interrupt this moment. It wasn't part of his plan, and this interference may easily destroy a decade of planning. Maul pointed his lightsaber right in front of Palpatine's face, meeting Mace's purple blade.
How could I have not seen this?
No, Maul. Master Windu is trying to overthrow me. The Jedi are taking over. Please, help me. Anakin, tell him what has happened. Windu plans to overthrow the Senate.
Anakin looked to Maul, but didn't answer. He remained silent and glanced back to Sidious.
You betrayed us. You are the traitor.
Maul looked back to Mace, then to Palpatine. The Zabrak expressed visible anger. He gritted his teeth as he remembered all the horrible things Palpatine had done to him. It all flashed by so quick in his mind, like a lightsaber igniting. The torture on Dathomir when he was very young, the nightmares, the death of his brother. It all came crashing down on him. He couldn't believe that his close friend was the same man who did these horrible things to him.
You must help me, Anakin. Please, don't let them kill me.
Maul became distracted with his thoughts, not paying attention to Anakin and his master. His cold stare pierced into Palpatine's eyes and soul. The Chancellor sensed his boiling rage along with a massive shift in the Force against his favor again. This is what Sidious feared, the unexpected.
I am going to end this once and for all.
You can't. He must stand trial.
He has control of the Senate and the courts. He's too dangerous to be left alive.
I'm too weak. Oh, don't kill me, please.
You are far too dangerous to be wanted at trial. You must die.
It's not the Jedi way. He must live.
Please don't.
I need him.
Please don't. No!
Maul's quick reflexes allowed him to block Anakin's attack. In the exact millisecond that Mace swung his blade down, Palpatine shot a quick spark of lightning onto the ceiling right above them, blinding all three men with a flash of light. Palpatine used this quick 3-second distraction to roll over and jump out the window. By the time the men opened their eyes, Palpatine was on his way down. Mace Windu would look to Maul, who's pairing up against Anakin, ready to clash. Maul glanced to his master, giving him the signal to go after the Sith Lord. Mace looked down once more and without hesitation jumped out the window as well. The two young Jedi Knights engaged in an intense parry. Their blue lightsaber blades clashed, much like their ideals and where they stood in this situation.
What do you think you're doing?
How dare you try to assassinate the Chancellor?
What has he promised you? You cannot trust him.
We cut to Mace, who's sliding down the side of the Republic Executive Building. His sights were focused on the Sith Lord. As Palpatine landed on the docking platform, he saw his lightsaber a few feet away. He used the Force to grab it as he ran towards a group of parked speeders. Palpatine needed to hurry because Mace Windu was right behind him. Windu landed and set his sights on the Chancellor as he began sprinting towards him with his lightsaber ignited. One small misstep or even miscalculation could cost Palpatine his life. He had so much to lose, while Mace Windu had nothing to lose in killing the Chancellor. His whole plan was at stake. Sidious hopped on his speeder and headed for the nearest military base. It's what the logical choice would be, but Mace Windu jumped on his speeder as well. He wasn't too far behind, and no matter what way Palpatine went, Mace cut him off. Palpatine was panicking internally. He had to think of something quick. Back in Palpatine's office, Anakin attempted to go after him by jumping out the window, but he was quickly stopped by Maul. The Zabrak stood in his way. Anakin and Maul then engaged in a duel. Maul was slightly holding back on Anakin since he didn't want to kill him. Anakin, on the other hand, wasn't holding back as much. He hasn't been corrupted by the dark side at this point, but he's still dangerous and powerful. The two dueled throughout the Chancellor's office before making their way through the hallways. There's just so much at stake. After many years, the Jedi finally found out who the Sith Lord was. Now remember, Anakin needed Palpatine alive because he believed that he was the only chance at saving Padme, which is why in the original timeline, he attacked Mace. His love for Padme and brashness clouded his mind and judgment. Thankfully, with Maul's interference, that didn't happen here. But it doesn't change the fact that Palpatine was still in danger, and Anakin knew this with every passing second that went by. If Mace managed to kill the Chancellor, Anakin was under the assumption that he won't be able to save his wife from certain death. This alone fueled Anakin in his fight against Maul. Their duel wasn't too short nor too long. Maul's use of a pod helped him counter Anakin's aggressive and heavy lightsaber attacks, as he redirected that energy right back to him. The two went back and forth, constantly parrying and holding each other off for as long as they could. While Anakin was the far more powerful and younger Jedi, Maul was much more experienced and older. This gave him a slight edge. If Maul couldn't tire Anakin out or beat him by force, he'll have to play games by manipulating him. Maul may be a Jedi in this timeline, but he is still as calculating and conniving in his own way, much like the original Maul. Maul was aware of Anakin's friendship with Palpatine, but something seemed very off to him in regard to Anakin's reaction when Palpatine said,
I have the power to save the one you love. You must choose.
That statement alone sparked a suspicion that Maul has had for quite a while, but never told anyone for some reason. It all made sense to him. The one who Anakin loved, that Palpatine referred to, had to be Padme. It started to make sense to him as his duel with Anakin lingered on. He now knew why the young Jedi was so adamant on not killing the Chancellor. Both men argued back and forth on what should be Palpatine's fate. As they continued to duel throughout the halls, Maul attempted to speak some sense into Anakin. They parried up their blades one last time and then broke off, keeping some distance between each other. They used this opportunity to catch their breath and talk. Maul mentioned to Anakin that Palpatine being the Sith Lord meant that he indeed had been playing both sides of the war. He then adds that he knows why Anakin doesn't want Palpatine to die. It's because he somehow needs the Sith's help to save the one he loves, which is Padme. This stunned Anakin. He was surprised that Maul even knew this. How could he? This was Anakin's most guarded secret. Maul follows the dogmatic and arrogant views of the Jedi, but he wasn't born yesterday, and his strong attunement with the Force allowed him to make this connection. Anakin's silent demeanor and facial gesture at the mention of this would further confirm to Maul that Padme is who Palpatine spoke of earlier. Maul added that Palpatine's promise of saving his wife is without a doubt through malice and deception. This is how the Sith operate. He continued talking to Anakin, attempting to manipulate him against Palpatine, but with the truth. Maul brought up that Palpatine had to be the one who ordered the assassination attempt on Padme back in episode 2. When Anakin realized this, his guard is lowered down for a slight moment. He contemplates what Maul just told him, but it doesn't change the fact that Palpatine is in much danger. Anakin doesn't care for the Sith. He only cares for what can save his wife, which is directly tied to the Sith, from his understanding. Before Anakin could snap back from his blinded rage, Maul used this opportunity to subdue him. He charged at Anakin and swung his blade, managing to knock him out with his lightsaber hilt, like how Maul did to Qui-Gon in the original timeline. With the young Jedi unconscious and subdued, Maul turned his lightsaber off and exhaled out deeply. He began pondering on everything that had happened since the Sith revealed themselves up until now. Maul understood exactly what was at stake here. The fate of the Jedi rests in his hands, along with his master. One very important detail that Maul remembered that is very relevant and recent with this situation is a specific case that Mace knew about, involving a clone trooper named Fives, and the clone inhibitor chips, of which Maul had knowledge of. Maul came to know of this isolated matter from Mace Windu not too long ago. Maul connected the dots of this. It all started to make sense to him. The clone under Anakin's Legion had been correct in his assessment that Palpatine was in on a secret plot to destroy the Jedi. Maul began talking to himself, being fascinated at discovering the overall bigger picture of what was at play here.
Brilliant. Brilliant. It all makes sense now. He planned to turn the clone army against us. Yes, of course. Now I see. The clone Fives was right in his judgment. He saw what we could not. The chips are the key to defeating the grand plan. We were foolish into disregarding Dooku's involvement with the clones. Everything is clear now.
We cut to somewhere in the city, where Mace Windu was still in pursuit of Palpatine. The two sped through traffic, breaking every speeder law that there was. Palpatine needed to figure out how to lose Mace. There was just no way he could beat him, alone at least. Mace forced him into the lower levels of Coruscant, by continuously cutting him off and taking shortcuts. Here he may have a chance to lose the Jedi Master. Palpatine made his way into the lower levels of 1313 as he landed his speeder on a balcony and proceeded to run into the crowded streets filled with various civilians, the root of all scum and villainy. Since his face had been badly scarred, the people here wouldn't be able to identify him, and it wouldn't end well for both, as seeing a high political figure in such an environment would only make things difficult for the Chancellor to hide. Mace wasn't too far behind. He needed to act quickly and efficiently. One small mistake could cost him everything. The lower level of 1313 is a huge area. There's various places for Palpatine to hide or sneak away. He cannot engage Mace as that would ensure his death. Mace continued to investigate the area, following Sidious's trail with his senses, but ultimately he would have no luck and decided to go another route. Sidious managed to lose Mace in a large crowd of people. The Sith Lord made his way into a nearby crowded nightclub and sat idling, waiting for the right moment to continue moving along. Eventually, Palpatine exited through a backdoor alleyway as he peeked the corner of a street and saw Windu in the far distance. He decided to find another way and continue deep into 1313. Mace Windu, however, would go in a completely different direction. Back in Palpatine's office, Maul made his way out the door as he is contacted by his master.
Maul, I've lost Palpatine's trail, but he cannot be far.
Where are you?
The lower levels of 1313. I chased the Chancellor into the main district, but lost him in a crowd. What's the status on Skywalker?
He has been dealt with, for the time being.
I knew he couldn't be trusted. Get down here as soon as you can. We cannot let the Sith escape our grasp. Palpatine's fate will determine the outcome of this war and the Jedi Order.
We then cut to a Republic Venator up in the sky, just above the city. Commander Venza walked down a hall. He opened his holocommunicator to answer an incoming call.
Venza, we have an urgent situation.
What's going on, sir?
I regret to inform you that Chancellor Palpatine has committed treason against the Republic. He is the Sith Lord we've been looking for, and is hereby labeled a traitor.
The Chancellor is Darth Sidious? This is unexpected.
Unfortunately, my friend, this is the reality of what we're dealing with. Master Windu chased him down the lower levels of 1313, but lost his trail. Take a small squadron of your most trusted men and find him. We cannot risk those with inhibitor chips to become a liability. Everything is at stake. Be very discreet.
That won't be a problem, sir.
The Chancellor is a very dangerous man. I have dealt with his wrath before, so do not underestimate him. I have it under good authority that the majority of the Senate may or may not side with this traitor. Once all is said and done, execute Order 65.
Yes, sir. Right away.
Maul soon began making his way to the underworld. Anakin by now had left, which Maul had no knowledge of. In the Venator above the sky, Venza had carefully assembled a special select of clones within his legion. All of the clones in this command room do not have inhibitor chips, and the reason for this is because during the time the Fives case was closed not too long ago, Maul discreetly told Venza to further investigate this on the low. The information he found was enough to make him remove his chips. And to those around him, Maul felt something very off about the whole Fives incident, which is why he looked into it alone before involving his commander. The investigation was cut short due to certain circumstances. But Maul forwarded what he knew to Venza, who then made his own findings. The reason why every clone in their legion didn't have their chips removed is because Maul instructed Venza to only move forward with removing chips of clones he trusted, and those he was close to, so to avoid this from spilling, as Maul sensed something bigger was at play, but could never figure out exactly what was going on. So, a few months ago, Venza had his chip removed, along with a small group of clones who he trusted. They all made a pact to keep this a secret as to not expose their findings and possibly put their lives in danger.
All right, men. We're under new special orders from General Maul. Chancellor Palpatine has been marked for termination or arrest by Order 65.
The clones collectively looked at each other as chatter quickly filled the room. They couldn't believe what had just been uttered out of their commander's mouth.
Under this directive, any and all leadership from the Supreme Chancellor ought to be ignored. The General has made a recent discovery that Palpatine is the Sith Lord the Jedi Council have been looking for, and he is currently in pursuit after him, which means he is a traitor and will be dealt with this one. This is a discreet operation, which means this briefing is strictly isolated. No one outside of this room can know until this is resolved. Understood? Yes, sir!
The squad of clones discreetly prepared to deploy down to 1313. The small squadron took 2 Republic gunships, with a handful of clone troopers in each ship. It's a mixture of regular infantry clones, snipers, 3 unnamed ARC troopers, and 1 commander, being Venza. As the 2 gunships flew out from the Venator and down into the atmosphere of the city, we cut to Sidious, who's still on the run. The Sith Lord was depending on Anakin's turn to switch the tide of the battle, but Maul's interference, which has now spiraled down into this, had completely flipped Palpatine's plans upside down. Sidious did not expect the unexpected. On the other side of the city, Maul was also making his way, but since the clones were much closer and had faster ships, they got there first. As the gunships prepared to enter 1313's atmosphere, Venza briefed his men on the strategy to capture or kill Darth Sidious. The clones would split into 3 groups, each tasked with tracking down the Sith Lord based on Mace's intel, since he'd be contacted by Venza and filled in as they flew down. They deployed small probe droids to help track down Sidious, and eventually, one of the probe droids would report a suspicious hooded figure who's later identified as Sidious himself, and it was forwarded to the clones and Maul, who was nearby and attempting to regroup with his men. As the clones closed in on Sidious's location, Mace Windu catched up in the distance, but he was stopped by an attacking Anakin Skywalker. Anakin had awoken earlier from being unconscious. His feelings and senses led him here, where he then attacked Mace from behind.
Stand down! Stand aside, Anakin. The Sith must be destroyed.
The Chancellor must stand trial. You cannot execute him.
Anakin, come to your senses.
Letting you kill him is against our Jedi beliefs. I won't allow it.
He's manipulating you, making you betray the Jedi Order. Can't you see that?
The only thing I see is a Jedi trying to assassinate a politician. You're the one who's betraying the Republic.
Anakin and Mace continued battling in a closed-off street, not too far from where the clones were. Maul arrived shortly after, to the district they were in. He was far behind the clones who had followed Sidious deep into an abandoned neighborhood. that had been crawling with rodents, filth, and broken down buildings. Sidious was eventually spotted where a chase then ensued. The Sith Lord ran through the streets in attempts to lose the incoming clones who were trailing behind him on foot, as well as the 2 gunships chasing him. As Venza would yell at him to stop, Sidious was quick to make a run for it. He ran through various street corners, turning in different directions and various alleyways. The clones in the gunships began firing at him. This forced Sidious into a building where he then ran through them, jumping through windows and rooftops. This chase went on for a while. When some of the clones closed in on him, Palpatine force pushed them off the buildings and through the windows. It was an intense, chaotic, and dangerous situation for both parties. Sidious managed to kill the pilot of one gunship by jumping in front of the pilot's cockpit and thrusting his lightsaber through the glass, which resulted in the gunship spiraling down and exploding, killing all the men aboard and causing immense damage. This explosion was heard throughout the whole area. Maul had seen the fire from afar as he continued racing through the city on foot to get to his men on time. Palpatine was eventually cornered in an alleyway by the remaining clone troopers. Venza commanded him to turn around slowly, to which Palpatine then uttered the words,
"Execute Order 66.
A sadistic smile creeped from Sidious's mouth as he looked up to make eye contact with the clone commander. The clones stood still and looked at each other for a brief moment, but they kept their weapons aimed at Sidious. He sensed something was wrong. His smile was quickly wiped away, as Venza said,
"We are no longer required to follow your orders."
The clones prepared their blasters for the eventual firefight that would ensue.
"Chancellor Palpatine, you're in violation of Order 65. I accuse you of treason against the Grand Army of the Republic and the Jedi Order for murder and conspiracy. You'll be stripped of your rank and subject to execution or arrest."
Palpatine growled in anger as the clones got closer. In a quick motion, he unleashed a massive, deadly wave of Force lightning, instantly sending Venza flying back and crashing into a light pole across the street. The Force lightning killed the clones who were electrocuted much longer, with the exception of Venza, who by now was severely injured. Another group of clone troopers made their way into the alleyway, where they were quickly slaughtered by Sidious's deadly lightsaber attacks. The Sith Lord did not hold back on his vicious slashes and decapitations. He's realized that these clones had been compromised to his grand plan of executing Order 66. Just as he finished killing the clone troopers, Maul was racing down the street where he saw Venza on the ground. He went to check on his friend, but Venza advised Maul to forget about him and to go capture Sidious instead. The clone commander then pointed to the alleyway where Maul then saw all the dead bodies and an escaping Palpatine who had jumped up a ladder on the side of the building, making his way to the rooftop. Seeing his men slaughtered like cattle angered Maul. He proceeded to run after him. The young Zabrak chased the Sith Lord through various rooftops and street corners, ultimately ending up near Mace and Anakin's proximity, where they had been fighting. Palpatine was running towards the landing platform where he had originally entered. He saw Anakin in the distance and yelled for him to follow. Anakin pushed Mace off of him and quickly proceeded to go with the Chancellor. The two hopped on a speeder, riding out of the wretched hive of level 1313. Maul and Windu regrouped shortly after, right as Sidious and Anakin made their way to the landing platform. The two Jedi took a speeder as well and flew up towards the surface, trailing not too far behind from the traitors. A high-speed chase then ensued into the core city. Anakin, being the superior speeder pilot, helped him and Palpatine greatly as the young Jedi dodged various traffic and buildings in their way. Palpatine instructed Skywalker to go back to the executive building where his office was located, instead of the nearby Republic military base, because he didn't want to take a chance that the clones there may be compromised as well. Instead, Sidious used Anakin's communicator to contact the base, specifically Commander Fox, to execute Order 66. But before he could reach the clone, Mace Windu sensed this and force pushed a nearby traffic sign that was floating near them to hit their speeder, which resulted in the communicator being knocked out of Sidious's hand. Maul took a shortcut and ended up right above them. He attempted to get in position so that Mace may jump and tackle the Sith Lord off the speeder, and end this once and for all. As they both got closer to the executive building, Palpatine unleashed a deadly streak of Force lightning, which damaged Maul and Mace's speeder, blowing up the front engine. The speeder started to lose momentum and slowly descended. Mace used this opportunity to jump off so he can attack Palpatine and Anakin, but the distance between the two was just too far. He used his lightsaber to cut the side engine on their speeder as he fell down. Both vehicles violently crashed down in front of the executive building onto the landing platform. Anakin and Maul were hurt from the explosion caused by the crash. Mace suffered some internal damage, and Sidious was hurt too, but not as bad as the other three. Palpatine got up and made his way to the entrance, hoping to rush into his office so he may reach his desk communication to execute Order 66 on a galactic-wide scale. It's the only thing he has left to attempt. Maul was the second person to stand from the violent crash. He was not too far. The Jedi Master ignited his double-bladed blue lightsaber and got closer and closer to the Sith Lord, ready to end his life with no mercy. Sidious realized he wouldn't make it in time, so he turned around and shot Force Lightning at Maul. Essentially, the office scene repeats itself here, but with Palpatine trying to overwhelm Maul with his devastating Force Lightning. As Sidious unleashed his unlimited power, Maul got closer with the intent to deflect the lightning back on the Sith Lord, as Mace did earlier. Anakin had been knocked out slightly. He saw what was happening after opening his eyes and realizing what was about to happen. He stood up and limped to Sidious, pleading with Maul to stop, but the pain was just too much. Anakin fell, barely being able to stand and make his way to the Chancellor. As Maul held his lightsaber tight, the Force Lightning began redirecting onto Palpatine's face, severely hurting the Sith Lord even more. After a few seconds longer, he gave up. Sidious pleaded with the Zabrak Jedi to not kill him. Palpatine was legitimately terrified. As Maul stood over the Sith Lord who's caused him so much trauma and harm, he motioned his lightsaber and proclaimed that he will not become his victim anymore.
You may have corrupted my brother, but you will never corrupt me. I repent you in the dark side.
Sidious realized there was no way to convert Maul, or convince him. He cried out to Anakin in hopes of having young Skywalker intervene to save him, but it was no use. Anakin was just too hurt. Maul turned to look at his master, who was in clear pain. Mace yelled at him to kill Sidious, and then he slowly glared right into Palpatine's eyes. The man who's caused so much destruction and death. Had it not been for Maul, Mace would have likely been dead, and he knew this. The powerful Jedi Master continued to hold his saber tight in the air. He was so tempted to strike down the Sith Lord. His mind started to flood with all the horrific things Sidious had caused him in his life. The trauma and torture as a youngling, the nightmares he constantly had up until now, and the murder of his only living brother at the hands of this man, this evil man. The only family he had that Maul wished to turn to the light had been taken away from him by this Sith Lord. This same Sith Lord who robbed Maul of his childhood, his life. His mind began being overwhelmed with flashbacks of emotion, hatred, and fear. Maul was very self-aware of what Palpatine had done. This whole war had been fabricated by him. All of those battles and innocent lives lost, Jedi and clones alike, was all of this Sith Lord's doing. The thought of this sparked another temptation to give in to his anger that had been building up inside of him. He wanted to end it. He knew that if Sidious were to live, all would be lost. He was too dangerous to be left alive, Maul thought to himself. On the outside, he now showed himself as a helpless old man who was afraid, but deep down, a void of pure blackness lived within. Maul wanted to kill Sidious. He felt he needed to, but he knows this isn't the Jedi way. He is a Jedi, and Jedi do not kill in anger, but he feels this should be an exception. The exception that this man should die for what he's done to him and the galaxy. But who gets to decide who lives or dies? Would he be betraying the same teachings he swore to uphold? Palpatine killed his brother, almost murdered his master, and slaughtered his men, who Maul knew were created by the Sith. But for what purpose? A pointless war with no side truly winning? The temptation grew stronger within the Zabrak, as his rage boiled up, more and more as each second went by. Sidious sensed this and panicked even more. He slowly stood up with his hands raised, pleading with Maul to please not kill him. Maul was conflicted, but he knew he had to make a choice. a choice that will decide the fate of the galaxy. He wanted to kill him, but he knew he shouldn't. Not in anger, but the anger's just too much. It's too overwhelming. His emotions were gradually taking over. They were getting the better of him. Anakin yelled at Maul to stop, but he wasn't listening. He raised his lightsaber even more, preparing for a passionate strike of pure rage and fear. Fear of being the Sith's victim again, and fear of losing the order that had given him a purpose. Maul won't let that happen. His eyes widened, his teeth clenched as he breathed in and prepared to kill the Sith Lord. But before he could make a choice that he would possibly regret and lead to much greater consequences, a blaster shot was heard. Sidious looked down to his chest and noticed a hole with a trail of smoke. The Sith Lord dropped to the floor, dead. Maul turned around to see Commander Venza aiming his blaster at them. Venza lowered his pistol and dropped it. A good soldier had just followed his orders and completed the mission. Maul looked back down to the lifeless body of Palpatine, then his own hand. He dropped his lightsaber out of disgust as to what he almost did. Moments later, clone troopers and gunships circled the area, as the bright lights from the gunships were aimed directly at Maul and the Chancellor's dead body. This became a complication. Later that day, word quickly spread around that the Supreme Chancellor had been killed by a clone trooper. It became ironic. The very same creation Sidious orchestrated to eliminate the Jedi and gain power ended up being the cause of his own downfall. Word quickly reached the Senate, specifically the Vice Chair, one of Palpatine's most trusted individuals of his inner circle. Mace Windu was well aware of the Chancellor's true identity. With his master gone, the cowardly politician had no one to turn to. He knew that if the Jedi managed to outsmart Sidious's plan, they would eventually connect the dots and lead the trail back to him. Returning to Coruscant, the Jedi Council held an emergency meeting of their own where they discussed the events that had transpired. Security recordings would be shown of Anakin and Maul dueling in the Chancellor's office, and body cam footage from the deceased clone troopers and Venza's. Obi-Wan would be most disappointed and saddened at Anakin's choices. The Council collectively voted to banish Skywalker from the Jedi Order. He would be imprisoned for treason against the Jedi Order, the Republic, and aiding the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious. He was brought before the Council, though they would soon find out why Anakin decided to aid the Chancellor, as his true motives would be revealed when they eventually interrogated him. The Senate held an emergency hearing that lasted several days and weeks, of what to do with the relationship with the Jedi Order and how to move forward with these troubling revelations. Evidence of security recordings showing Mace attacking the Chancellor would not sit well with the Senate, but their opinion slowly swayed once recordings of Palpatine fighting the Jedi would appear. But it was the horror of Venza's body cam footage and the other clones that led to the Senate voting on their decision. Maul, Mace, Venza, and Anakin were the only witnesses and people involved in the final moments of Chancellor Palpatine. They each would take a stand in the Republic Court, giving their side of the story. It didn't look good on the Jedi's part that two respected masters were attempting to kill the Supreme Chancellor. This would create a massive storm in the political and social atmosphere of the Galactic Republic in the weeks and possibly years to come. Maul's revelations of the true purpose of the clone army sent the Senate and the public into a tense frenzy. Millions of citizens and politicians would question the Jedi Order in the office of the now deceased Supreme Chancellor. The Jedi Council conducted their own internal investigation into Palpatine's true plans. They eventually discovered the intents of Order 66 and immediately halted all clone forces in the galaxy by beginning a process of removing every clone trooper's chip. In canon, clone trooper Kix discovered the true purpose of the inhibitor chips. It's safe to assume that if one clone with the knowledge he was given would crack the case, then the whole Jedi Council could do the same with the information they knew in a much faster pace. The trail would eventually lead to Mace Windu. He would most likely be arrested and imprisoned for treason. While Sidious was dead, the Separatist Council was alive and well, as Anakin wouldn't have killed him in this timeline when he went to Mustafar. The Clone Wars would possibly last another year, as the final Separatist droid holdouts would continue to fight back. And without the leaderships of Sidious, Dooku, and Grievous, the war could indeed be over soon. Days after the death of Darth Sidious, Clone Commander Venza stood in front of a memorial that had been built of the men lost that night. All of the clones who served with him from the very beginning were murdered by the same man they had been brainwashed to protect and die for. The revelation of Sidious being in control of both sides of the war and the recreation of the clone army for the sole purpose of a fabricated useless war made Venza question his own loyalties to the Republic. Maul walked up to the memorial and quietly stood beside his old friend for a few moments before speaking up. He explained to Venza that this was a huge shock for him and the Jedi Order as well. Venza concluded that his whole service in life had no true meaning, as he quickly came to figure out that he and his men were just disposable tools created for a pointless and useless war, of which didn't matter if he died or not, since their actions had no effect on the outcome of the war. They were all puppets in a much bigger game. This severely caused a massive disconnect with Venza against the Republic. It's possible that he quietly deserted the army, and if he did, Maul wouldn't fault him for it. With Anakin being banished by the Jedi Council and imprisoned, this would confirm to Mace and those who didn't believe in the prophecy that Anakin was indeed not the Chosen One. The prophecy read that the Chosen One would bring balance to the Force, and they believed this meant by destroying the Sith. But Anakin did no such thing. He didn't destroy the Sith, but instead joined them. So the Council believed this to be true, and would disregard Anakin as nothing but a false prophet. But it still doesn't explain how or why his midichlorian count was much higher than Yoda's. This would continue to be debated amongst the Jedi. The Jedi Order celebrated Maul and Mace's efforts in concluding the fight for the Sith Lord. With Anakin removed from the Council, Maul was rewarded with Anakin's seat on the Jedi Council. One of his longtime goals have been fulfilled. Once Senator Amidala gave birth to Luke and Leia, it would soon be discovered that her and Anakin had been in a secret relationship. After the Council observed the security recordings of Palpatine telling Anakin he could save the ones he loved, and Mace and Maul's testimony, the dots would soon be connected. In the days following Anakin's sentence, he was later visited by Mace and Maul in his cell. Mace did nothing but berate the young former Jedi, telling him that he knew he couldn't be trusted and that he is a disgrace to his master, Qui-Gon, and the Order. Of course, this only infuriated Anakin and made him feel even more guilty. Mace left after saying his final piece. The only two left were Maul and Anakin.
You were supposed to bring balance to the Force. I sense that had I not interfered, you would be in a much worse state than you are now, and our order would have perished.
Anakin turned his back to Maul and walked to the corner of the dark cell.
Senator Amidala has successfully given birth to a set of twins. It appears your fears were false premonitions by Sidious. You have nothing to fear anymore for her, but your own consequences. Goodbye, Anakin.
Maul then walked out the cell, leaving Anakin to contemplate on the decisions that had led him to where he is now. Later that day, Maul confessed to Yoda and Mace in his quarters that he snuck to Mandalore to encounter his brother in hopes of converting him to the light side, to find and destroy the Sith. Maul knew that if he could turn his brother to the light, he may help the Jedi in finding the Sith Lord. Any and all chances of this were stripped away when Sidious killed him right in front of him. While Yoda and Mace would find this confession most concerning, they understood that without Maul, the Sith wouldn't have been destroyed, and it didn't really matter what he did, because ultimately, it ended with Maul's interference in the office scene that resulted in Sidious dying at the end, with the help of his clone commander, of course. While Yoda expressed worry in this confession, Mace believed this to be the will of the Force, but Yoda wished to continue speaking on this matter for another time. We end our story with Maul and Mace looking out from the balcony at the Jedi Temple. The two were focused on the warm sunset that settled over Coruscant. They both were pondering on what would happen next.
Something on your mind?
Master, I sense an uncertainty.
Like what?
Could it be possible that the Sith are still alive?
That is highly unlikely.
After his death, I could still feel something out of balance.
Your worries are clouding your reality again. The Sith are gone. You have nothing to fear. What you sense is the impending conclusion to this war. There are still hundreds of separatist droid holdouts in the galaxy. Soon, they will be destroyed, and then we can finally end this war for good. Finding the Sith was just one piece of the puzzle. Now we see that. The Force works in mysterious ways.
So Skywalker is not the chosen one?
It seems not. It appears that he was a false prophet, and shouldn't have been trusted to begin with. That was our greatest mistake.
If by any chance he is the chosen one, would this mean that the Sith are not truly gone?
I do not believe that. The reality is that the Sith have been found and neutralized. Palpatine has no control of this war, and we can finally pursue true peace. You worry too much, my apprentice. It's time to look past what has happened, and seek what is forward in front of us.
So this left Maul with two conclusions. Anakin isn't the chosen one and was a false prophet all along, and the prophecy was misread. Or he is the chosen one and the Sith aren't truly gone. But how would this make sense? He thought to himself. Maul saw Sidious die right in front of him. Mace dismissed this theory, thus further playing into the arrogant mindset of the Jedi Order. A decade ago they didn't believe the Sith could have returned.
He was trained in the Jedi art. My only conclusion can be that it was a Sith Lord.
Impossible. The Sith have been extinct for a millennium.
I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing.
Ah, hard to see the dark side is.
And now that the Sith are apparently gone, they see no chance of Palpatine being alive, or anything seeming out of the ordinary. Windu smiled and walked away to attend the Senate hearing on what the decision will be moving forward regarding everything that has happened, and importantly, the relationship between the Republic and the Jedi Order. He left his apprentice alone with his thoughts, before giving the Zabrak a positive outlook on the future that awaits them. The death of his brother by the man who he considered a close friend will always haunt him, as such a personal strike to his soul could never be healed. His brother was forever gone, and any opportunity of turning him to the light side died along with him. Maul would unfortunately still struggle to grasp this horrible reality. Maul doubted Sidious wouldn't have a backup plan. He had a sneaking suspicion that something else may be at play. Were the Sith truly gone? Is Anakin not the chosen one? Or is he, and the Sith haven't truly been destroyed? These were important questions that he pondered about, until remembering what his master told him, to not worry and to not have such a cynical view on everything, and to remember the reality that Sidious is gone and can no longer cause chaos in the galaxy. Maul's journey and story concluded here, as the new Jedi Council member looked out into the sunset, realizing he can now finally be at peace, as his tormentor was gone, therefore concluding this Elseworlds tale.